these negative things which the CEO of the Institute of Race Relations talks about from 2008 downwards, they are not accidental. Somebody decided that it must happen like that. Look at absolutely everything. We are very fortunate, for instance, that we had the Nugent Commission of Inquiry into SARS. You remember the problem with SARS? The problem with the Revenue Service was that for many years it was outperforming itself. During this period to 1994 to 2007, it's really outperforming itself. And then at a later stage, it started underperforming itself. And so the question arose, what has gone wrong? That's how the commission chaired by Judge Nugent was appointed. I don't know if I ask people here to raise your hands. How many people have read that commission report? I wouldn't be surprised if I don't see any hand. It's available there. It's in the public domain. It's in the internet. And what the Nugent Commission says is that this was a deliberate decision to destroy the Revenue Service. It was prepared for. There's this fellow was appointed as head of the SARS, Tom Moyane. Tom Moyane was prepared from 2013. Tom Moyane was appointed head of SARS in 2014. But from 2013, he was being trained by this American company, Bain, to take over as head of SARS. When Bain appeared before the Nugent Commission, and they said to them, you started working with Mr. Moyane on SARS in 2013. How did you know he was going to be appointed head of SARS in 2014? And the answer from Bain was, no, we were told that he has a personal ambition to be head of SARS. And so we decided to help him. They trained him and prepared him to destroy SARS. The Sunday Times, for a whole year, carried articles about so many bad people in the leadership of SARS. Very bad. When Moyane came in, one of the first things he did was to sack all of these people identified by Sunday Times as bad. After which the Sunday Times apologized that we were very wrong to point to those people as bad. And now, colleagues, you know that SARS is responsible for 95, 98% of state revenues. You destroy SARS, you destroy this democratic republic. The Nugent Commission details what happened to destroy SARS. This is one of the things that happened in this period identified by the CEO of the Institute of Race Relations of this this decline. It was very deliberate, very conscious. Some people decided that. I'm saying it's a very specific example with all of the details to substantiate the point I'm trying to make, that this negative decline which the Institute of Relations is talking about, was not accidental. The notion is put about that, no, this was because there were greedy people and there were corrupt people. Yes, indeed, there were greedy people and corrupt people. But there were also other people with a political objective, which was to destroy the democratic revolution. And those of us who are old enough will remember that the first time we had a national shutdown, load shedding, national, was in January 2008. Professor Nzovu, you remember that? It was January 2008, load shedding, national. The mines closed down for a whole week. Serious crisis. And the argument was that the reason for that was because ESCOM had told the government in 1998 that there must be investment in new infrastructure. And the government didn't listen. New infrastructure for generation. Government didn't listen. Hence the blackout in January 2008. That story was false. That story was cooked up. The reason there was a shutdown in January 2008 is because the people who were in charge of the power stations didn't do what they were supposed to do, which was to replenish coal, so that you got coal nearby to put into the power station. They didn't. The power stations ran out of coal, not because there was no coal in the country, but the people in ESCOM decided, let's shut it down. I'm saying, but the lie was told that, it's because the government didn't do this investment. It was not true. There is somebody who was an old friend of mine. I don't know if he still is. I think he still is. Brian Molife. Brian gets appointed to head ESCOM in 2014, April or thereabouts. And by August 2018, they had finished with the load shedding. Again, all of us who are old enough will remember that. Already then, that 2014, no more load shedding. 2015, no more load shedding. 2016, no load shedding. It comes back towards end of 2017. And all what they did, Brian and his colleagues, was to maintain the equipment properly. To maintain the equipment properly so that you don't have to have these shutdowns. Now, if you ask anybody, what did Brian and the others do in 2014, such that for so many years there was no load shedding? They will find all manner of reasons. Instead of looking at this one, to maintain, to repair, to do whatever. And indeed, for so many years, there was no load shedding. He left. After a little while, it came back. So I say, it was very correct of Prime Molefe to say, I've been brought from there to here to deal with this matter of load shedding. Let's look at it seriously and act on it, which they did with positive results. So by the time this load shedding comes back in 2017, 2018, you must be able to guess why. It's because you got new people who don't behave in the way that Brian Molefe behaved. Why? I think it's deliberate. Seven years after Kusile started building the Kusile power station. 7 years after they started, there was not one, whatever you call it, of electricity that was coming from Kusile. After 7 years, nothing. What ESCOM did was to contract an Indian company to come and build Kusile. The company came and built Kusile Unit Number 1 in a much shorter period than was expected. And Kusile Power Unit Number 1, there it is, generating electricity. After 7 years, this Indian company was able to solve whatever the problem was. So it is not as though during the 7 years there were no ideas as to what is it to do in order to make sure that Unit 1 produces electricity. But the people who were there decided that they would not use that knowledge until the Indians were brought in. We used that knowledge, and in no time, Unit 1 was working. And then there's a strange thing that happens. So the Indians are expecting that their contract will be extended so that they do Unit 2 and Unit 3 and so on. No. ESCOM says to them, we will extend the contract on condition you get a PEE partner. So, what the Indians had done, they had brought something like 50 engineers and technicians from India to do this power station. So, of course, they say to ESCOM, we don't understand what you mean by this black economic empowerment. But for instance, if you have some black engineers to join ours, so maybe that. No, we don't have people like that. And they were training 150. As they were working on that Kusile thing and Mitupi, they were training 150 people. But because they couldn't agree on this PEE thing, they terminated the contract of the Indians. So Indians went home. Kusile is still not finished to this day. I'm saying it's deliberate. It's people who have wanted to produce this electricity crisis in the same way that they wanted to produce a revenue crisis by the destruction of SARS. You look at all of the state institutions. Look at Transnet. Look at what's happened to the police service. Look at the prosecution. All of these things going wrong systematically. Is it an accident? It's not. That is why I'm saying this question that was raised by our colleague from the Northern Cape is important. It was not only people being marginalized after 2007 ANC conference. There's a whole process that takes place in this country which still we don't understand, of a systematic process to ensure that the democratic republic doesn't succeed.